Of my millions of calculations, there was one so remote and unlikely I did not consider it.
Yeah, that Sega would drop the ball entirely on this DLC. I was genuinely excited for Sonic Frontiers' third and final DLC. It promised to fix some of my issues with the original game's repetition, add new playable characters, and improve both the final boss and the ending. The morning it dropped, I popped on a Sonic t-shirt, came downstairs, set my PS5 to download the new content, and spent most of my workday looking forward to playing it after clocking out. Why then did I find myself, after 2.5 hours of gameplay, turning off my PlayStation 5, putting my controller down, and choosing to just watch the story cutscenes on YouTube instead? In short, this DLC features some of the worst Sonic the Hedgehog gameplay I have ever experienced. I have not been this disappointed with a Sonic release since Sonic 4 Episode 1, and I haven't been this frustrated with the gameplay, level design, and hazard placement since the end portions of Sonic Adventure 2. On the surface, things seem positive and well-meaning. My gripes with Frontier's final island, Oranus, was that it looked too similar to previous islands. Repeating the same core loops to collect the Chaos Emerald saw me nope out through sheer fatigue. I abused Big's fishing minigame to skip most of it, and I know I'm not alone in that. And the final bosses were not only underwhelming, but switched gameplay genre on us. In theory, changing that island to have a playable Amy, Tails, and Knuckles collect the emeralds, while Sonic, to save spoilers, takes care of something else, could provide an injection of sorely needed variety, helping to distinguish the endgame from everything that came before. In practice, Sonic Team fumbled the ball spectacularly. I had assumed that this DLC would take place at a point in the story where Amy, Tails, and Knuckles seemingly miraculously and instantly heal Sonic's cyber corruption. It felt like something was missing there on my first playthrough, and I said, that will be filled in with DLC. I was wrong. That scene still seems very strangely paced, with the issue resolved too quickly and easily. This DLC retcons and replaces the final island, Oranus. If you want the original, it's still there, you can still play it, but if you want that new shit, then there's a giant warp ring on Oranus that will take you to the brand new take on the game's finale. And given my thoughts on this new content, it's a good thing that it's entirely optional. The new playable characters, Amy, Knuckles, and Tails, don't have tutorials. You're just dropped into playing them. I would highly recommend opening their skill trees and taking a look at their abilities, because the game's not going to communicate them to you. The Psyloop is a new ability that was introduced in the base Sonic Frontiers. It's required to interact with many of the game's collectibles and challenges. The new characters don't start with this crucial ability unlocked. They do, however, start within a few feet of one of these Traveler Coco that give you far more than the single skill point you need to unlock the Psyloop. So why gate it off in the first place? The same is true for the Stomp and other basic movement mechanics that, by this point in the game, you're used to just having as Sonic, so you'll go to press the corresponding inputs and be surprised that nothing happens. Hell, Tails doesn't even have an attack until you unlock one with skill points. I also found the moves characters did have from the outset didn't always work. For example, Amy's homing attack was very hit and miss, to the point that I initially wrongly assumed that she didn't have one, following multiple failed attempts to homing attack a spring. Outside of that, Amy has a triple jump and a glide that evokes her tarot cards, as do most of her in-game abilities, and her cutscenes. That's one way to give her a distinct defining feature, but it makes me miss her hammer. I also found that her triple jump made the camera jerk upwards, making platforming sections unnecessarily difficult. Oh look, foreshadowing. Knuckles retains his glide and his ability to climb some walls. The glide feels off. He holds himself in the air for a moment before starting it, something that has led to the discovery of an infinite jumping glitch for Knuckles which you'd have thought Sega would learn from Sonic Boom, but no. After this stalled start, you then discover his turning arc while gliding is pretty wide. It generally feels delayed and unresponsive, like you're merely suggesting a direction to him. Wall climbing is now nerfed, being limited to just these red patterned walls, where previous games let Knuckles climb just about anything. It's also just as hit or miss as Amy's homing attack, with Knuckles refusing to attach to walls when he very clearly should. As you might imagine, this led to significant frustration. Tails' flight took some getting used to. He seems to gain a burst of height shortly after takeoff, and then stays at that altitude. While he lacks a homing attack, and that is sorely missed when trying to land on springs and the like in a 3D environment, Tails felt like the most finely tuned character with the most responsive and fun controls. I can say something nice about this DLC. He also benefited from some of the better designed platforming and Chaos Emerald challenges. I particularly liked creating these large Psyloops across multiple platforms and boosters. The only downside is that his flight is so broken, he can outright skip certain sections by flying around or over them. But then again, that's also true for Knuckles' glide ability, something that really showcases the fact that the game's egregious pop-in has never been addressed or resolved. Like before, the island does have a lot to do and find. We still have challenges that unlock sections of the map, and some of these are now better suited to specific characters. In what I played, I couldn't freely switch between characters, so I was put off exploring, prioritising getting everyone from point A to B for their main quests, because I didn't want to trek over to a map unlock just to find out that I brought the wrong person for the job. Something I did frequently encounter were lookout Cocos. These are new to this update, but the game doesn't introduce them or explain what they're for. It seems like Sonic's main objectives might be gated behind them, but I didn't stick around long enough to find out for sure. Generally speaking, while none of the new playable characters impressed me, they were also inoffensive. Bar the odd mild frustration, their sections were fine, I guess? Over with fairly quickly, and certainly not the reason that I quit the DLC. No, my anger and frustration came when I was back in control of Sonic. As spoiler-safe as possible, while our new trio collect the Chaos Emeralds, Sonic has to ascend 4 towers and complete a challenge at the top of each tower. This first climb nearly broke the limits of my patience. In short, it's a precision platforming challenge that doesn't suit the game's loose and slippery controls. Something that surprised me when returning to Frontiers is that I had to readjust to how this Sonic plays. I maintain that Sonic has never controlled better than he did in the Dreamcast version of Sonic Adventure, and that everything since then has been a downgrade. Frontiers Sonic feels something like a bottle rocket, making it easy to overshoot or send him flying into the air. No amount of fiddling with the sliders in the menus gave me something that suited my tastes. It makes me overly cautious when using him. I'm aware that, on PC, you can download mods that improve Sonic's controls, but 1, I'm playing on console, and 2, I'm reviewing the game that Sega put out, not fans' efforts to clean up their messes. So we come to this tower ascent, and alongside precision platforming and aerial springs to homing attack to at short notice, we also have gotcha moments, such as a boost pad shooting Sonic off a platform the second you land on it, angled platforms that you slide straight off of, and climbable walls that it's nigh on impossible to get a good angle for. That's fine, at least it's short with plenty of checkpoints, right? Right! Not only did I find myself repeatedly asking how much more of this climb is there, but any time I made an error, Sonic fell all the way back down to the start. Now, it is possible to try and land on a previous platform halfway down, losing less progress, but this section seriously needed a pulley or something at key checkpoints so that you could just sit back up and try again. No joke, this climb took me 30 minutes of swearing at my TV and wanting to snap my controller in half. I hated it, and in the back of my head I was thinking, this is the first, and presumably easiest, of at least 4? I don't want to do 3 more of these. Call it a skill issue if you want, but this layout is flat out malicious. The designers knew exactly how evil they were being, and it just came across as unfair and exhausting. And this is from a guy that actively enjoys the finale of the original Tomb Raider. When you get to the top, you're thrown into a combat trial, but hang on, your level is reset. Yeah, no matter how much time and effort you put into exploring and leveling up Sonic, especially in the original release where you had to go through the full dialogue for each and every individual level up, this challenge resets you to level 1 in all stats. That's a slap in the face that just makes this timed battle take far longer than it should, while undermining the game's light RPG mechanics.
So, that was fun.
Immediately after this, the game proudly told me I had a second tower to clamber up. Nope, no way, I needed a palette cleanser. Thankfully, there are new cyberspace stages with new objectives to complete. I hopped in there and, why can't I homing attack these egg robos? I'm clearly supposed to. Where is this spring sending me? Why is this hologram of Tails I'm supposed to race so quick? Wait, this string of homing attacks ends and now I'm falling into the void? This stage does show a commitment to multiple branching paths, but otherwise, it's full of all of the bad design patterns and practices that made the first tower climb an absolute chore. This was it. This was the moment that I turned the console off, put the controller down, and watched the cutscenes on YouTube. And you know what? That story is kind of mid. I expected more. It's certainly not worth suffering through the gameplay for. And I do say suffering. The reason that I quit this DLC was because it was obvious to me, my wife, and my son that I was not having fun playing this DLC. That's the most damning thing that you can say about a game. Regardless of story, characters, or graphics, above all else, a game is made to be played, to be fun. If you're not having fun, buddy, what are you doing here? It's time to put the game down. It has failed in its core mission statement and purpose. Believe me, I take zero pleasure in telling you this. I was excited for this DLC. I wanted it to be awesome, but the more I played it, the more my heart broke. More than anything, I felt disappointed and let down. Maybe part of it was me trying to rush through so I would be spoiler safe before venturing back online. An impatience to ensure some random didn't ruin a reveal for me. And sure, that likely contributed. It's why I usually dislike doing videos on games or DLC during their launch window, as there's an additional pressure from needing to get that content out in a timely manner while the topic's still relevant. None of which impacted this video, I'm sure. Likewise, this experience came at a time when I am writing a script about why I gave up on Xenoblade Chronicles and when we should cut our losses, deciding a game or series just isn't for us. So this idea of dropping something I'm not enjoying was consciously at the forefront of my mind. I'm probably going to edit that script to include at least a passing reference to this Sonic Frontiers experience now. Primarily though, this is a poorly made, poorly designed, and overall shit DLC that cranks the difficulty to unreasonable levels while failing to explain any of its new mechanics. And I'm not alone in this. My IRL friend, Mr. Terry Chaos, did not enjoy this DLC for many of the same reasons. I joined the Game Apologist stream of this DLC, and he seemed to be having a pretty rough time of it. My own prematurely rage quit playthrough is not the only one that was utterly miserable. And I want to be clear, this isn't an issue of time, budget, or resources. This isn't a case of testing. This is a combination of conscious and terrible design decisions from a team that thinks punishing equates to fun. Hard can be fun. Again, I'm a fan of the original Tomb Raider. I've enjoyed what little I've played of Demons and Dark Souls. I can persevere through fun, rewarding, and legitimate challenge. The Frontiers DLC isn't that. It's a mess of bullshit gotcha moments. Izuka tells us that Frontiers is the template for the next 10 years of Sonic, that open zone is here to stay, that the level design of Forces and Frontiers is what we can expect going forwards. If that's the case, I'm out. I'm done. I want no part of that. This was so awful that Mr. Terry Chaos has cancelled his Sonic Superstars pre-order, despite it being a different genre and developer, because he can't trust Sega with Sonic anymore. He needs to see the reviews for Superstars before he bites, and it's hard to blame or disagree with the guy. I'm glad this DLC was free. I would be demanding a refund if it wasn't, but even without a price tag, my strong recommendation would be to simply not subject yourself to it. Sorry, this one was a bit of a downer, guys, but man, I have not been this disappointed in a game for a very long time. On the plus side, I'm planning to review Batman Arkham Asylum for Halloween, one of my favourite games, so expect things to be much more positive there. Subscribe to make sure you see it when it goes live, and a huge thank you to my patrons Crow, Tiny Jericho, Mr. Terry Chaos, Guma Spice, and Ducky Go. If you want to join them and get access to early scripts and other goodies, there's a link to my Patreon in the video description.